There exists a crop that quietly violates almost every rule modern agriculture depends on. It can produce more total food per acre than potatoes. It survives winters that destroy wheat. It grows back year after year without replanting. And once it is established, seed purchases become unnecessary. You plant it once, and it returns on its own. For most of human history, this crop was not considered unusual. It was essential. It was famine insurance. It was a safety net built into the land itself. Entire communities relied on it because it did not fail when other crops did. And then it vanished. Not because it stopped working, not because it was inefficient, not because it was inferior. It disappeared because it was too reliable. A plant that spreads on its own, feeds people without recurring cost, and survives neglect cannot be easily controlled. And anything that resists control struggles to fit inside systems built around ownership, taxation, and recurring transactions. Crops like that do not generate dependency. They generate independence. This is the story of a perennial food plant that survived empires, endured global wars, fed millions in secret, and still grows quietly beneath the surface of modern farmland. And the real mystery is not what it is. The mystery is why it was removed from memory. The historical record begins on the eastern edge of North America in the early 17th century. In 1605, a French explorer named Samuel de Champlain landed on the coastline that would later become Massachusetts. He was welcomed by Algonquin communities with a ceremonial meal. Among the food served was a rough, knotted root vegetable, unfamiliar to Europeans. The Algonquin called it kaishucpenauk, meaning sunroot. Champlain tasted it and immediately took note. In his journal, he compared its flavor favorably to the artichokes of Europe. He recognized its value not as a novelty, but as a serious food source. Before leaving, he filled the cargo hold of his ship with the tubers and carried them back across the Atlantic. The plant would later be classified as Helianthus tuberosus, a perennial sunflower native to the Great Lakes region and eastern woodlands. Today, it is often called the sunchoke or Jerusalem artichoke, though neither name explains its importance. Long before European contact, indigenous nations already understood exactly what this plant offered. Among the Iroquois, the plant was woven into origin stories. One legend describes Earth Woman dying while giving birth to twin sons, Sapling and Flint. From her body emerged the first sunchokes, a food born from sacrifice and meant to sustain life. The symbolism mattered because the plant itself embodied that story. Above ground, it grew tall, often 8 to 10 feet high, crowned with bright yellow flowers that followed the sun. Below ground, hidden from sight, were dense clusters of tubers storing energy for the future. These tubers were not starch-heavy like potatoes. They stored inulin, a slow-digesting carbohydrate that behaves differently in the human body. Indigenous farmers planted sunchokes once and harvested them year after year. Underground rhizomes spread outward like veins beneath the soil, forming living food reserves that could not be easily destroyed. One planting could sustain a village for generations. That permanence was the point. It wasn't just convenience, it was security. If a storm wiped out above-ground crops, the tubers remained. If a drought ruined the season, the underground reserves could still be dug. If an invading army burned fields, the food hidden beneath the soil was harder to seize. This crop wasn't designed to be impressive in one perfect year. It was designed to be dependable through bad years. And history is mostly bad years. By the early 19th century, the crop had already proven its value beyond theory. In 1805, during the Lewis and Clark expedition, supplies ran dangerously low while crossing the Dakotas. Starvation was imminent. Sacagawea recognized signs of underground food caches built by rodents for winter survival. These caches were filled with sunchokes. She dug them up, roasted them over open fire, and fed the expedition. Without that intervention, the journey might not have survived. That detail matters because it shows something bigger. The plant wasn't just cultivated by people, it was part of the landscape's survival economy. Animals stored it. Humans found it. The plant sat quietly in the middle, turning sunlight into food and hiding it where winter and chaos couldn't reach. The tubers were extraordinarily versatile. They could be eaten raw, crisp, and mildly sweet, similar to water chestnuts. They could be boiled, roasted, or mashed. They could be dried and ground into flour that stored through winter. They tolerated freezing temperatures while remaining edible underground. When hunger arrived, the food was already waiting. From an agricultural standpoint, the numbers were remarkable. A single plant could yield 3 to 6 pounds of tubers. An acre could produce more total food than wheat, and in colder climates, more than corn. Later studies confirmed yields as high as 64,000 pounds per acre without irrigation. Potatoes, even under ideal irrigated conditions, typically produced less. This was not luxury agriculture. It was survival agriculture. It was food designed for instability. And the plant's design wasn't random. A tall sunflower-like stalk builds massive leaf surface to harvest light. The root system builds deep anchors and moisture access. The tubers become stored energy, a backup generator the plant can reboot from. That's why it returns. It doesn't need you to remember it. It already planned for your absence. When Champlain introduced sunchokes to Europe, the continent was struggling. Soil fertility was declining. Crop failures were common, and famines arrived in cycles. The potato was not yet trusted. Many believed it caused disease, but sunchokes spread quickly. In France, they became known as topinambour. In Italy, girasole, meaning sunflower. They fed peasants and livestock alike. They required no fertilizer, minimal care, plant in spring, harvest in fall, leave fragments behind, and the next year's crop regenerated on its own. Centuries later, university trials confirmed what farmers already knew. Sunchokes produced significantly more yield per acre than potatoes, and in caloric terms rivaled corn. So why did they disappear? The answer lies not in biology, but in systems. Sunchokes are irregular, knobby, uneven in size. They are difficult to clean and difficult to harvest mechanically. They spoil faster than potatoes and do not store well in centralized warehouses. Their inulin content causes digestive discomfort for people whose gut bacteria are not adapted to it. By the mid-18th century, the potato won not because it was superior nutrition, but because it fit industrializing systems. Potatoes were uniform, easy to store, easy to transport, easy to tax. Warehouses, markets, and bureaucracies could all rely on them. Sunchokes did not cooperate, and that's the deeper issue. Industrial agriculture doesn't just grow food, it manages predictability. It needs crops that behave on schedule, that can be graded, sorted, stacked, shipped, and stored. A plant that produces uneven tubers, ripens in stages, and regrows from fragments is a nightmare for centralized planning. The plant is doing what nature designed it to do, but nature didn't design it for the grocery aisle. They were pushed aside, relegated to animal feed, labeled poor people's food. In North America, settlers dismissed them as weeds. European crops that required annual seed purchases and centralized control were preferred. But the plant never vanished. It waited. Then, war returned. During World War I, Germany was cut off by naval blockades. The winter of 1916 became known as the turnip winter. Potatoes failed. People starved. Sunchokes, growing wild in neglected fields, saved lives precisely because they could not be blockaded or confiscated. That tells you something uncomfortable. When supply chains break, the crops that matter most are the ones that were never fully domesticated into the system. The ones that don't require deliveries, the ones that don't require annual restarts. World War II was worse. In occupied France, Nazi forces seized the majority of agricultural output. Potatoes were shipped to German soldiers. Civilians were left with scraps, rutabagas, and sunchokes. For nearly a decade, millions survived on topinambour. They despised it. The tubers were small, hard to clean. Eaten daily, they caused painful digestive distress, but they kept children alive. In the Netherlands, the winter of 1944 killed over 22,000 people. Emergency cookbooks listed wild plants, tulip bulbs, and sunchokes. Families dug frozen soil with bare hands. After liberation, survivors refused to eat them again. An entire generation associated the crop with hunger, occupation, and trauma. The food that saved lives became a symbol of suffering. It vanished from markets and memory. But nothing about the plant itself changed. Nutritionally, sunchokes remained dense, roughly 73 calories per 100 grams, 2 grams of protein, potassium levels higher than bananas, iron, copper, magnesium, B vitamins, and most importantly, inulin, often comprising more than half of its carbohydrate content. Inulin passes through the stomach undigested and reaches the colon intact, where beneficial bacteria metabolize it. This process produces short-chain fatty acids that improve mineral absorption, reduce inflammation, suppress pathogens, and strengthen immune function. Studies link inulin to improved digestion, stable blood sugar, and reduced risk of certain cancers. Unlike potatoes, sunchokes do not spike glucose. In the late 20th century, diabetics reported reducing insulin needs after incorporating them into daily diets. Folk knowledge quietly aligned with science. And the infamous gas problem isn't a mystery either. It's biology. Inulin feeds bacteria. If your gut is not used to it, those bacteria shift rapidly and produce gas during fermentation. That's not poison. That's adaptation. Traditional communities that ate sunchokes regularly didn't treat them like a digestive disaster. Modern diets simply trained many people to lack the microbes that handle high inulin foods comfortably. The fix is gradual exposure, smaller portions, and longer cooking, because heat can convert some inulin into simpler sugars and reduce the shock. But modern food culture doesn't like adaptation. It wants instant compatibility. The plant also heals land. As a perennial, it requires no annual tilling, no soil disruption. Its deep roots fracture compacted ground, retain moisture, and build organic matter. It tolerates drought, flooding, poor soil, and temperatures down to -30 degrees Celsius. Where annual crops fail, it persists. That persistence matters because annual agriculture is a reset loop. Every season, fields are cleared, soil is disturbed, biology is disrupted, and nutrients are replaced from the outside. Perennials don't play that game. They build stability into the ground itself. They create soil memory. They encourage fungal networks, microbial communities, and carbon accumulation. Over time, a perennial patch can become more productive while needing less intervention. That doesn't just feed people, it reduces dependency on constant correction. In the 1960s, a California produce wholesaler named Frida Kaplan noticed crates of unsold tubers collecting dust. The name was the problem: Jerusalem artichoke, confusing and inaccurate. The plant was neither from Jerusalem nor an artichoke. The name was a linguistic accident derived from the Italian girasole. She renamed it sunchoke, trademarked the term, and packaged it with recipes. Sales increased dramatically. Chefs rediscovered it. Restaurants embraced its nutty, sweet flavor. But large-scale adoption never followed. That part is telling too. Even when the crop became fashionable in kitchens, the supply chain didn't transform, because the barrier isn't taste, it's structure. A restaurant can buy a few boxes, a national system needs uniform harvests, predictable storage, mechanized processing, and distribution that doesn't punish irregularity. Sunchokes resist becoming standardized. In the 1980s, during the American farm crisis, some farmers experimented with sunchokes as food, feed, and biofuel. Inulin fermented easily into ethanol. Yields were high. The plant was perennial. The idea was sound. The economics were not. There was no processing infrastructure, no stable market. Farmers lost money. But the idea survived quietly in self-sufficiency circles, permaculture systems, and marginal lands. And that is where sunchokes thrive best, outside of centralized demand. In small farms, home gardens, and community plots where resilience matters more than uniformity. Where people care more about a crop returning than looking perfect under fluorescent lights. Today, sunchokes are studied for climate resilience. As heat, drought, and instability increase, Crops bred for predictability struggle. Sunchokes were bred by nature for chaos. So why aren't they everywhere? Because industrial agriculture demands uniformity. Crops must ripen together, harvest cleanly by machine, ship without bruising, store for months, look identical under artificial light. Sunchokes refuse all of this. They mature unevenly, spread aggressively, resist eradication. Any fragment left behind regrows. In Europe, they are labeled invasive when they escape cultivation. Invasive is simply the word we use for organisms that succeed without permission, and that label exposes the psychology underneath modern farming. We are comfortable with life that obeys. We are suspicious of life that persists. A crop that refuses to be fully controlled forces a question no centralized system wants to answer. What happens when people stop needing the system? Sunchokes do not need seed purchases. They do not require chemical inputs. They do not generate dependency. They cannot be patented. They do not produce perpetual revenue. Crops like that are dangerous to systems built on control. History shows the pattern repeatedly. Amaranth was suppressed for cultural reasons. Tepary beans were abandoned because machines could not handle them. Mesquite was cleared for cattle despite protecting ecosystems. Natural remedies were replaced by expensive pharmaceuticals. Plants that enable autonomy are systematically erased, not because they fail, but because they succeed without chains. Most people alive today have never tasted a sunchoke. They have never watched it grow. They do not know that planting a handful of tubers can yield dozens of pounds within a year. That knowledge still exists, but it lives underground. Climate instability is accelerating. Floods, droughts, and heat waves strain annual systems. The crops feeding billions were bred for stable conditions that are disappearing. Sunchokes were built for disorder. They store energy below ground where drought cannot reach. They survive cold that kills potatoes. They outproduce corn using a fraction of the water. When industrial systems fracture, they will still be there. French families survived occupation eating a crop they hated. Dutch mothers fed children from frozen soil. Indigenous nations planted it as a gift meant to endure. Names changed, memory faded, but the plant never left. It remains perennial, underground, waiting. We did not lose this crop, we forgot it. But forgetting is not permanent. The knowledge still exists in wild patches, roadside growth, escaped tubers, and home gardens, where 3 plants become 30. Abundance was never absent, it was buried. So here's the question worth sitting with. When stability disappears, will your food come from systems that require constant permission, or from plants that return whether you remember them or not?